Yeah.
So thanks for everyone taking the time out of your schedule to join us for this. And what we're going to do today is talk about, why we edit photos. Not so much like here's a tool, here's a slider, here's a filter, and it does this, but why do we use them? And ultimately to serve our photo, to make our photo stronger. And one of the very first things I want to do is I'm going to share a screen. I have 12 images here. Let me put this on the screen here. Okay, so there's 12 different photos that we could work on today. We're not going to be able to work on them all, but they're numbered 1 through 12. Start taking a look at them and pick out your favorite 2 or 3. This is going to be your little homework assignment for this webinar. I'll let this be on the screen for a minute or two. And then Dylan's going to run a poll here and just say, tell us which one you want to see us work on today, and just check off a few of them. We'll gather the data and then we'll just work through the list as you all want to see things. So hopefully you can see that poll right on top of I'm seeing it on my side here, and you can actually, I don't even have to stop sharing. You can still see the images along with the poll. And if that's the case, great. Go ahead and just, pick your favorite 2 or 3 that you see here, fire that in, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to check the Q&A to make sure people can see. If someone can tell me that they can see the poll as well as see the thumbnails of the images, then I will not stop the share. We weren't sure how this was going to work when we were prepping for this. Okay, yes to both. Okay, excellent. So I'll just let that sit here. Let me take a look. I got a minute and a half past 10. So I'll let this go until about another 60 seconds. Go ahead and fire in what you want to see worked on. And then yeah, like I said, we'll go through some of the images here. While you're picking things, I'm going to ask you to forgive my voice is a little rough. I'm post COVID. I got COVID last week, so on the mend, which is great. But I may have to pause and grab a sip of something and keep my throat moist. And if I have to turn and cough, you'll understand why. All right, so let's see, maybe another 30 seconds, and then we can close out the poll. Okay, I got some folks saying they can't submit their answers. That's interesting. I don't have.
I don't know if there is actually a submit button in there. Is there? Because I can't see a submit button on my end. All I see is people answering. Yeah.
Okay. I can't do it myself because I'm a panelist, so I can't submit votes.
I'm seeing
if you're seeing results show up, then I think we're going to be okay.
I think it should be good. I think everyone's getting their answers, and there's a ton of answers coming in.
Okay. All right. Some folks are saying you had to click 4 options to submit. Okay. So if you need to, go ahead and
that
choose
might be the
4.
ticket. Yeah. Sorry, guys. You might have to choose 4.
All
that
right.
may be the golden ticket. Thanks, whoever put that in the Q&A.
That was the anonymous attendee. I was gonna thank them by name, but just the anonymous attendee is the winner of the figuring out the 4 thing. Okay. All right. So now that we have that little thing figured out, I'll let this go for another maybe 30, 35 seconds. And at 4 after, according to my clock, we'll go ahead and get started. All right. And Dylan, if you see things slow down on your end, you can let me know. We don't have to let it run arbitrarily long. Someone else had to select 6 to get a button to show up. Wow. Okay.
Zoom is finicky. I'm really sorry how, sometimes the polls roll real smoothly, and then sometimes, you get something like this. But I think there's still a few more rolling, and maybe go till 5 minutes, because it's only been 3.5. Let's just maybe go to 5 for the choices.
Okay. All right. So if you're just joining, we're running a poll. Look at the thumbnails on the screen and pick. It seems like at least 4 is a magic number to get a submit button. Photos you'd like to see worked on during the webinar. We're not going to be able to get through all 12, but I wanted this to be a little interactive and let you all have a say in what we work on today, because these photos, they kind of represent things I think are in most of our photo libraries. Some things, oh, the conditions are pretty good, and the lighting is good, and other ones are, I kind of grabbed this because I was in a place at that particular time, and it's what I had. I liked like the bones of the photo, but what can I do to bring the story out? So yeah, please go ahead and keep picking things there.
And I think I found what is going on. So you have to choose from both um, poll questions. So he had 12 photos, but the question only allowed 10. So I made a continued one. So you actually have to answer. That may be why there's so many on.
All right. So
maybe it may be a little skewed, but I still think it's gonna be good because there's a lot of votes coming in for the other questions as well. So
okay, all right.
but you do have to answer both photo questions.
That's interesting. All right.
But
so mental
the mission
note next time.
Yeah, but the mission is, I think that's the one I would choose. It's a beautiful photograph. So
yeah. So okay. So that's a good thing to know for the future. Limited to 10, Scott. All right. Why don't we go ahead and close out the poll so we can get started with seeing what some of these results are, and start working through some photos and see how the ON1 tools can work. While Dylan's looking up stuff and getting the tallies here, we got, okay, I am seeing stuff here, and we're going to have to skew things a little bit, considering that you had to choose something from the bottom too. So let me grab a little scrap of paper here. We are looking at, I got 44% here for Street Shibuya, right?
I think that's definitely a winner.
Yeah. And then we have Misty Ocean at 38. I'd say that's good. And then probably we'll go to the mission.
I think those are the three.
Yeah. And then let me get maybe 5 on the radar just in case we have time. Then it looks like 7 and then 10. Is that how you're seeing it, Dylan?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, we'll go from there. Okay, cool, great. Well, thank you.
Sorry about the poll confusion, guys. Next time it'll definitely be 10.
Yeah,
much easier to answer.
Keep it to 10 or less. All right, so thanks for all that. And so the first photo that people wanted to see most of was this here. So this is kind of a semi from the hip street shot, and it's one of those, I think, like I said, we have a lot of photos like this in our library. Why I took it, what really caught my eye, and let me use my little zoom pen here, so you can see what I'm thinking, is it was really this person here that they caught my eye. They were crossing the street. There was a momentary break in the street traffic, and that's really my subject, and I want to accentuate her. This stuff that's here is great context. The sky is just horrible, but that's not important to the story of my photo. And ultimately, I want the processing to emphasize my subject, somehow bring attention to her. And that's what I'm going after. So let me bring this into the edit module. And as I go through this, if there are questions, go ahead and fire them into the chat. Dylan will help me out in fielding questions, but I'll get through the basics here, and I'll pause at certain points to get through things. So first and foremost, when I'm starting with a photo, I'll audition the camera profiles, right? I'll just kind of hover over them and look for what I think is nice. And neutral was good. Portrait was good. I liked taking some of the contrast out of it. I know I'll add contrast later, so I'm not too worried about pulling in too much, or having contrast be too light. So this is not a portrait, but between neutral and portrait, actually, I think I kind of like camera neutral. I'm going to take that as my baseline. And the profile is really interpreting the raw data. It's the very first pass that happens for your image. So I like to fiddle with that first, and then I hit auto. And that is entirely too bright for my tastes. And I'll use the slider here to kind of rein down how much or how little of the auto adjustments I want. And when I'm working on this, like I'll start by looking where I need to click on the slider. Once I'm moving that slider around, I'm not looking at the slider, I'm looking at the photo, because ultimately, you'll hear me say this a ton of times if you watch any of my stuff. The number of the slider doesn't matter, the look on the photo does. So that's where my eyes are. As I'm working this slider, I'm looking at the image. All right. One other thing will be white balance. There are a few good white points in here. I usually do just try out auto. Didn't really see much of a change. The picker, like this person's t-shirt, should be white. That ended up giving it a little bit of a greenish cast. So I will undo that change. So that was Command or Control Z. And here, my basics are fundamentally done. And by basics, I mean what I'm doing in develop. And develop is where we work on the initial tonality of the photo.
Just Scott, real quick, so I don't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
Could you show your
please.
levels tab while you're
Oh,
modifying?
absolutely. Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yep. So here's the levels. Okay. So, quickly before, after, you can see the lens corrections are on there too. So, okay. So everything is in range. And next is really starting to improve the story of this photo. I took this as a portrait orientation. In my opinion, it's too heavy on the top. I'm going into the crop tool. So that's, I use keyboard shortcuts a lot. So that's a C for crop. Freeform is fine. I don't need any of that stuff up there. My story is down here. And this is kind of almost ending up as a square. That's not necessarily my intention. I'll probably tug up a little bit here just so this is not dragging my eye away too much. I don't like this little tile here, but I don't want to go too tight and cramp my subject. So I'll cut the, split the difference, do something like that. Let's apply that change. Okay, we're already a lot stronger. I'm at street level. I'm looking at, what I want to be looking at. I'm curious. This was a bunch of years ago, and I took this by 24-70. Okay, I was trying to capture as much as I could, and I'll do that a lot when I'm in the field. Is I might shoot a little wider than I need to, because I can always tighten in later on. Now, to really start to get to work on styling the photo, moving into effects. Let's see. There's, the accentuation needs to be here. I like kind of the whole, street and neon thing going on. This is where I'll sometimes look at my presets. So let me open up presets, and we have some things in street. I like using the quick view grid, just hitting that grid and being able to see the different treatments. And looking at those, because most of the presets are applying effects filters. They're not changing your raw develop. So they're pretty safe to use. I do kind of like S4 and S5. They're a little harsh on contrast, but it's a good start. I can choose that. It looks like I get a little black and white-ish treatment and dynamic contrast. So let's see what these did for me. So after applying a preset, I like to walk through the preset. Okay, so dynamic contrast, this is very heavy-handed for this photo. I'm going to go back to natural, not surreal. That to me is much more palatable. Okay. Then black and white. This did some interesting stuff here. It did a mix. It's using, looks like a luminosity mask in reverse. And what is that doing for me before and after? It's taking, it's kind of muting colors. Not bad, but I think I will take that strength of that even lower. So I'm just getting that very light reduction in color there. Now, I do like some of the color. So I'm going to go in the opposite direction with some of the colors with a color adjustment. And let me pause there too. Is like, just realize as I'm thinking through this photo, a lot of times I'm asking myself, what do I need to do next to the image? You know, I did this basics, did the develop, added a preset, adjusted it, and I kind of said, all right, the reds in particular of the signs, I want those to be a little bit stronger. Like, that's what I want to work on next. And so my mind turns toward working through color. And so desert will do things with reds, oranges, and yellows. Even though this is not a desert scene, it's a pretty good starting point for the reds, oranges, and yellows. It will also do things with the blue. If I go into the blues, you can see it's upping saturation. There's not a lot of blue in this scene. A few people on the street have blue shirts. There's some blue up in the signposts and so forth. So, you know, those are kind of the color adjustment I'd want to do. Let me pause for a moment if there are any pertinent questions in the chat, Dylan, or I'll continue.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. The biggest one is talking about perspective correction and how you would handle that.
For this one, it doesn't bother me at all.
Okay.
If I wanted to do something with it, let's go ahead and do the experiment. So we're go down to transform in develop. We'll turn that on, and let's take a look at level. Okay. And so probably it's the buildings that are making folks like go, okay, well, this is kind of weird. How can I fix that? So I'll drag a line there, and I'm not liking that at all. That one didn't make me happy. So probably next would be trying to do, actually, this probably just trying to do something with vertical itself, and maybe bring that in there. I probably need to revisit my crop a little bit. Well, certainly for the pieces I'm losing at the end, but for sake of argument, let's go ahead and say, well, great, we'll take that. I can either crop or I can scale right here to take care of those edges, right? The scale will just crush things out there. I tend to prefer to do things with the crop. Gives me a little more control. I don't lose the bottom edge like I would have before. So let's say we'll take that as a perspective correction. Okay.
Yeah, for sure, man.
All right.
I think there's just one more, just sort of when you're editing question. If you want to just press the J key to show clipping, if there is any, there's a couple questions about that. Sure.
So I tend not to worry about clipping too terribly. Most of the things are here. So if I hit the J key here, we've obviously got some clipping in the blacks, my subject's shoes, some other people's shoes with the skirts, and there's tiny bits of flecks of red showing up the upper buildings here, like in the center up over here. I zoom in there, you see right up in there. Some of the signs, like these spectral highlights, they're going to be blown out. I don't worry about it unless I'm going to print this photo. If I'm going to just share this online, I just don't worry about it at all. If I'm going to print it, then when I got into printing and doing final touches to make sure that I don't want a blown out area, because I want to make sure ink hits paper. Otherwise, the tone of the paper will be the only thing in those blown out areas. So I'll sort of something being like egregiously blown out. I tend not to spend too much time worrying about it unless I'm going to do a final print. So there is a little bit of clipping here. Black points, I don't worry about. So long as they're not affecting my subject in a negative way. You know, if like my subject, like her entire shirt was, say, completely shown as clipped in the shadows, that would be a problem. But her shoes, that's okay. That's not an important detail for the subject in this photo. All right. So the next thing to do is really, I need to bring attention to my subject, right? I mean, we're getting closer, right? We, hit the backslash key. We were here, now we're here. Street level, certainly more obvious, but I need to get more attention to her. So let's zoom in on her. And there's a little bit of noise in the photo. I'm not going to worry about that. She's obviously in motion. That's kind of one of the things I like about the scene. I'll start working in the locals because I want to do localized adjustments. And I can add a little bit of brightness to her and then fade that out in the background with less brightness. And so with adjustment, let me pre-stage this with the light and style. That's going to push exposure really high. It's not going to stay there, but it will let us see the adjustments we need to make. And let me zoom back out here 1 second. Let's zoom out here. Let's get back into that lighten area. And the edges shape. So what that does is it says, whatever this local is, mask it away from the edges, the outside, and use, kind of like making a little spotlight on my subject. Now, this is still quite heavy-handed, but just to get things started, it's a good choice. Then we can dial back our exposure some. I'm ending up at 0.75. Again, it's I'm watching the photo. I'm not watching the number. Let me zoom back in here, and now we can check to see how we're doing on that mask. So get our masking tools there. I'm pressing the O key. I've got keyboard shortcuts to show me red, Command O to show red. These are in the view mode areas to see the red or the grayscale overlay. And so I'm affecting, everything that is not painted red. I want to taper that down some. So perhaps with an opacity of 50% up at the top there. Let's make the feather. I'm using the shift bracket keys here. And I want to paint out this brightness effect a little bigger from the other areas here. Oops, my perfect brush is turned on. Let's turn that off and just kind of sweep through there. And I'm being relatively cavalier with the brush strokes, which is all right. I have this other feather option I like to use as a global on the mask that just adds a little bit of softness to everything. O key, Z, zoom back out. That is looking now a little bit too false. And I do not like those brush strokes. Those brush strokes were too heavy. So I'm doing a series of undos on those. And if I'm going to do brushing, I need to use even a lower opacity than what I had. I had a 50%. Let's take that down to more like 25. Let's take the flow down so that brush comes out even softer. Shift brackets, even softer on that to just taper off some of the highlighting that I'm doing around this subject here. Don't want to do a second brush stroke. That looks too much. Pop that feather back up a little bit, and I'll reduce density ever so much. Density is just kind of taking the strength of the overall mask and lowering a little bit. Feather is adding softness to the edges of those brush strokes. So even after you've painted in at 50% opacity, but then you can play with density to make that even less. There's a lot of different controls that we have to get to a singular point. I think one other final change I'll make for this photo is just another kind of push your eye in the right direction with a local adjustment. Darken with a gradient. Oops. Let's try that one more time, a little slower. There we go. Gradient. Rotate that around. Now this won't be this dark when I'm done, but I want to push your eye down into the bottom part of the frame. Maybe around there. I ended up at half. That's fine. And I think I'm kind of done. So before, after, maybe a finishing touch with a vignette. I'm a sucker for a good vignette. And this actually gives me an opportunity to show you how I work with vignettes to work visually with them. Adding a vignette, take the feather all the way down to 0 and take the brightness down a pretty healthy amount. So now I can see the vignette, right? Make the size smaller. This will need to be more like an oval. So we'll try to push that around a little bit. Use this crosshairs so we can drag it around and position it over our subject, right? Now, when I push the feather up, watch the edge of the vignette. You're going to see it bleed both inward and outward. So that feather will go in both directions, right? See how it starts to feather out in both directions. And I usually end up pushing it very far to the right. And then I can refine the brightness so that the vignette, if you didn't watch me put it on the photo, but you can see the results of it before, after, it's almost imperceptible. You know, if you can't see the vignette, but you can see the impact of it, to me, that's a good vignette. So I think we're done with this one, before and after. Let's get some any questions there in the chat.
Honestly, not too many. Those couple few kind of answered it.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah, doing great. Looks awesome, man.
All right, so let's go back to our grid. The G key. Oh, let me hit that one more time. There we go. And so next up was number 4, this ocean photo. All right, so longer exposure. Yeah, I'm a sucker for long exposures. Love the ocean. So this is great. I'm glad this photo came up. So when I first captured this image, I thought that this rock would kind of be like leading lines and arc and so forth and kind of bring me through the photo. And as I look at it now, it's like, this isn't really working. Let me get my my zoom pen here again. You know, the story is really out here. I mean, this is the interesting area. This thing down here is almost distracting. You know, these things are distracting, although easily enough to retouch away. So first and foremost is I need to crop this and certainly straighten the horizon. So I'm not even going to start with the develop part of this until I get the crop right. So let's get my C key for crop. Freeform is fine. I don't worry about aspect ratios when I'm cropping. If it comes time to make a print of something, I will, you know, mat the print in the right way, or if I need to trim a little bit away when I print, maybe around there. This little bit on the side of this final rock here, that actually does bother me a little bit. So we'll retouch it away in just a moment. Let me make sure I've got the horizon looks pretty straight. Go ahead and apply that. And yeah, to me already, this is really a more powerful photo. It's bringing my viewer where I want you to look. There's less distracting elements at the edges, minus this little thing we're going to retouch away in a minute. And let's go ahead and do that. So we'll get our retouch tools open. So retouch, a couple of things to take care of. Let's actually check visualize dust. I might have something in the sky. I sure do. So for the sky retouch, I'll just use the classic retouch brush. Bracket key to make that big. Touch that away. Not seeing too much else. That'll probably, it'll be interesting to see what it does here. Let's go ahead and try it. Yeah, it does not work too well because of the texture in the water. That'll need a little more work. So I'll use the perfect brush for that, or sorry, perfect eraser. I'll go through there. Let it think about that for a second. That's a lot better. And the same thing for this bit of rock over here. I don't want your eye being drawn out of the edge of the frame. And that did not retouch away too well. That's a start. Let's go ahead with the retouch brush and see if we can clean that up. And this is the case with our retouch tools. Sometimes we need to use a couple of them to get the job done. Okay, I would probably end up fiddling with that for a minute or two more, but in the interest of time in the webinar, I will forego that and continue moving on with the rest of the processing here. So other things now that I'm thinking about with this photo, certainly there is missing shadows. We don't have a good black point looking at the histogram. There's a little bit of a space on the right side. So, the good news is all the tones are in range, but we need to stretch that histogram out a little bit and get more definition into the rocks. We want to keep the water soft. So I'll do my normal audition the various profiles here. And I'm moving my finger up and down my trackpad and watching the photo. I do just like landscape. I'll take that one. AI auto. And that's pretty nice, actually. I don't think I'll tone that down at all. Cool. Let's see I'll do the auto on the color. But usually with the seascape, I'll use the picker. I want the water to be the whitewash in the water to be the thing that's white. So I'm looking around here in the photo, and this like misty band of white that's in here with my picker, I'll click that once, and that's more pleasing to me. I am curious. Temperature was 4,900 for custom. As shot, it was 5,300. Auto was even warmer. Okay. So I've got to go pick that again. There we go. So that kind of matches general experience I've had with seascapes, where at least for my camera, Sony, as shot, it tends to be a little bit too warm, and I tend to cool it down by a few hundred degrees Kelvin. All right, so that's again the basics here. We'll hit our J key, and nothing is clipping. And there's a tiny little bit of, actually take that back, tiny little bit of clipping in the shadows on the rock. I do not worry about that at all. I think I explained that before. So we'll move into styling, unless there are questions in the chat.
Not too many questions. For a photo like this, I'm not sure if there is any dust on it, but do you use the visualize dust tool, Scott?
We did actually. Yeah, we did that at the very beginning there.
Oh, that's right. Sorry about that.
So there was one little thing out here,
right there.
And yeah, I mean, I'm looking around now that I have it turned on again.
Fine.
It's like, oh, now I see a couple of little things down here at the bottom, and again, there's like these little flecks over here. I probably will deal with those as finishing touches, because just want to. I don't want any distractions around the edges of a photo, because that draws the eye out of the frame. You want to keep your viewer in the frame as long as possible.
That was honestly probably it for questions.
Okay. All right. So let's move into some style here. So something I didn't adjust in the develop area was haze, and that's going to be a tricky balance here, because that's part of the story of the photo is like the mist and things around here, but up in the sky there's some haze. So I'm thinking about potentially reducing haze up in the sky. Certainly want these rocks to get more punch, and so we're going to start with that dynamic contrast. Now this is going to punch up everything, right? This is a global application, before and after, and it's pretty darn smart. So it's not heavy-handed. I think as a starting point, I'm going to lower the strength of this, and I'm watching the water as I do this, because I don't want the water to become too contrasty and have too much definition. That's probably nothing at all. That's full strength. So somewhere around where I end up at 40, that feels good. And then I'll do a second dynamic contrast, and this will target the rocks. I like to use luminosity masks a lot, and the tools that are in the masking area let me work visually with the luminosity mask. Let me show you how that works. I first want to make sure I have my grayscale mode turned on. Okay, I'll need to do that once I activate the mask. Mask, grayscale, luminosity mask, and then view. So Luminosity mask, same masking rules. Black conceals, white reveals. So my goal here is to get the rocks to be as bright as possible in this mask. So I want those to be white. And right now, well, they're not. They're darker. So we'll start by inverting, getting closer, and then start working with window and levels. And like I said, I'll just work visually. Okay, as I'm increasing the window there, I'm getting those shadows to be stronger. That is not the way I want to go. So I'm done with window. What have I got for levels? What can I do here to get more brightness into my rocks and darkness everywhere else? That's helping. Whoops, I accidentally double clicked and reset. So I undid that. That's helping too. I just need to deal with this bottom part and not having that, that area affected. But that's a very good start. And so now I can get a little more aggressive with dynamic contrast and pushing that up. Back into I'll view the mask again. So I can use the brush, paint out. We will push our opacity and flow all the way back up. Big brush, a little less on the feather, and just kind of get rid of all that stuff down there. Feather that down. I can put my perfect brush on, get through here. I won't do the entire photo in the interest of time, but you'll get the idea here. So I'll do this portion here just to take care of. I'm focusing on the rocks. Well, maybe I can do that sweep quickly. Okay. And I would do the same thing for the areas out there. So now my rocks are getting an extra pop before and after, and that's affecting only the rocks. And it's doing a really nice job on these ones on the side. My center one, a little less so. There is some atmospherics here. I mean, this is certainly there's a lot of churn happening in the ocean. There's a reason this got all misty, longer exposure. So there's going to be some atmosphere here. So naturally speaking, this will not have as much crispness as things that are closer to the camera. That does bring me to two things: is color and haze. Let's take a look at color. Color adjustment, sky, and most of the blue is out in the background. This is all white area, so that's helping. And this is actually helping to add depth to the scene because cooler colors will retreat from our eye. So the sky being cool, it's going to move toward the back. The rocks are generally a warm tone. They're like an orangey yellow, so those are going to move forward. I do want to talk about haze. We talked about haze, I should say, before. So let me move into a local, and let's open this thing up here. Let's pre-stage our haze slider. So I'll push. Let me do this. Let me invert the local adjustment so we are seeing it affect everywhere. So we can get the look that we want on the sky. I'll push it way far down so you can see how much haze can be removed. As we pull haze down, we can start to get some unnatural coloring. But that smaller amount of the reduction, there's like these little hidden elements out here, little secondary accents there. But I don't want to dehaze the entire photo. I just want it for really the upper part. And I'll include this center rock in that. I'm just pointing right now. I'm not brushing in this mask. So I'm applying it to everything. Well, we'll just use a gradient. Drop the gradient there. Flip it around. I'm watching the swatch here, so I can see. I know I'm affecting the top part of the photo and not the bottom. And then before that haze reduction after. Final step for me here is a vignette. This one's definitely vignette territory. Once again, feather all the way down, brightness down some so I can see it. Size. I'll push this upward a little bit. I want the eye to be drawn up and into the photo. Feather it out. And this one will probably end up being subtle. That feels pretty good, maybe a little heavy. So instead of trying to adjust brightness, I'll take the opacity of the filter overall and just reduce it there. So once again, that vignette being almost perceptible. You know, we'd know it's there. You know, we're photographers. We notice vignettes, but the general viewer wouldn't necessarily know it's there. Yeah, I think that's kind of the story on that one. Before and after. What other questions might be in the chat there, Dylan?
Yeah, so one great question coming from John is he's asking, I'm curious what your intent is when you're taking a photo like this. Do you take a shot like this intending it for online versus prints, or if you expose for the shadows versus highlights and sort of that sort of mindset?
Okay, sure. So when I'm capturing the photo, I guess I can't say I ever think about, am I going to print it or share it online? I mean, certainly, you know, sharing online is almost always going to happen. But for the exposure is, I will expose to the right. My cameras have a feature called zebra stripes. It's basically a live version of the blinkies. So if you see a little bit of clipping in the highlights, I know with a RAW file, no problem recovering that in Photo RAW. So if there's I get translated into blinkies. If there's a slight amount of clipping with the RAW capture, I'm pretty good, and that's kind of how I'll expose and capture for it. You know, John, does that answer your question? Hopefully.
I think so. That was great. Another question. A couple questions on the sunshine filter. Do you use it? How would you use it? Would you incorporate it into an image like this?
For an image like this, I probably wouldn't, but you know, let's talk about it because I do like glow looks for certain things. But I usually temper them with luminosity masks. I mean, I use luminosity masks a lot, but let's just say, you know, take our argument. Let's add a sunshine filter here, right? So sunshine. You know, this is already such a diffused photo. It's already, you know, kind of, it gives this like bright, airy look to it. For a landscape, like I said, I'll do this with a luminosity mask. And the reason, so full strength here, before and after, I'll view that mask again. This is the mask, the luminosity mask, and the dark parts are not getting the sunshine filter and the brightest parts are getting the full strength of the sunshine filter. This applies for sunshine, for glow. Actually, in the resize course that just went live, I talked about this kind of in detail on one of the photos, because in the natural world, bright things glow and dark things don't. And so any type of glow look, sunshine, glow itself, coupling it with a luminosity mask, you'll get a very natural and, in my opinion, very pleasing look to the glow. So, you know, that's before the sunshine. That's after. That's nice. Yeah. Not too bad. I might temper it down a little bit. I tend to use glow looks a little more in things that have, like, you know, like foliage. They look very nice on. This was taken, you know, well after sunrise, so there's already a lot of light in the area, in a scene that might have more stark brights and shadows, where adding a bit of glow adds a little more mystery to a scene. But I will use sunshine. Just I guess on this particular one, it didn't come to mind. And here's the thing. I mean, I could go look at this photo in 6 months and end up processing it a very different way, because some of it is, you know, well, how do I feel today, right now, when I'm looking at it? So I hope that answers that question.
Oh, no, totally.
Okay.
Another sort of, I mean, off filter question.
Yeah, sure.
A few questions about this, and it's sort of related to your steps in your editing. And I don't think this photo would apply, but it's, when would you use no noise or noise reduction in your editing process? Would it be sort of early on, you know?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as a landscape guy with a tripod, I'm almost always at ISO 100. So no noise often doesn't enter the mix for me. It does, like when I do something like Astro, though. But the answer to the question is no noise. If I have, you know, if my ISO is anywhere that's, 800 or above and there's noise, it's the first thing that I'll correct. If I can't get the noise under control, doing the rest of the processing, it's not going to result in the best photo possible. So it's the first step in any photo that needs to have noise reduction. They'll do no noise first.
Awesome. Yeah. That's what I was sort of thinking too. I was like, well, he shoots a lot of landscapes, so I don't know if he's cranking up the ISO too much, but
pretty rare. Pretty rare. Yeah.
For sure.
And if I understand, because I did a video on this on my YouTube channel in the last few months. And if I understand too, even if I skip it and I go back to it later, Photo Raw is smart enough to know, hey, I need to deal and apply whatever noise stuff you've done first. But if I need it, I want to do it first and see it visually and understand that, yes, it's under control, and then move on with the rest of the develop and things. So, in terms here, I'd started with the profile. I probably still would start with the profile. Then I'd jump down to doing, no noise, which in this photo, it's not going to make a difference. And we're seeing the split view here. It's off because of lens corrections. But I'm not going to want this kind of level of detail on this photo for this one. So we'll bag out of that.
Awesome. Yeah. Another question, and this is more related to the filters. And it's a couple questions saying, does the filter stack or the order of the filters matter? And could you sort of show an example of that? Okay.
Most of the time, they don't really matter. It is true that if I look at this stack, it's like, I added contrast here. The results of this will be fed into the next filter up, and then more contrast will be added. The results of this will be added here and so forth. There's a few instances where the order could matter. Like, for example, I suppose if you did black and white first, and then you added some sort of color adjustment versus the other way around, there could be differences, because if you've done color adjustments to get the photo to be its strongest color as possible, and then push that into black and white, and are doing some kind of auto mix, there may be a difference there. But for the most part, I haven't seen a significant difference. And kind of at the end of it, I don't necessarily care, insofar as long as the end result, however this is all stacked up, this here in the preview area, this looks good, I'm happy. No one's ever going to look at my photo and say, wow, I love that you added sunshine after the vignette, Scott. That looks fantastic. They're going to say, I like this photo. It looks good. So there are points where it does make a difference. Actually, I'll show you one. This is like a little, it's not a parlor trick, but it's a good little, bonus bump to a photo, an easy way to add global contrast. And this is an example of where the order does matter. When you're all done with stuff, and if you still say, I want a little extra of a contrast boost, add the color enhancer. Color enhancer by default does absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. But it's at the top of our filter stack. So all of these things feed in here. If I change the blending mode to multiply means basically take all the stuff before it and, well, multiply it. And then just take the opacity down to like 20-ish%. You get this contrast bump. If I put this at the bottom, we should see no effect, right? And it's still doing something. It must be taking in what I've fed in from develop, because develop will feed into effects. So there is a subtle difference there, but they're subtle. I'm not even sure if that, because I at least on my screen, when I moved color enhancer from the bottom to the top, I saw a slight shift. I'm not even sure if that's going to come through in Zoom video. Sometimes my adjustments are subtle and they don't translate well to internet video.
Yeah, no, that was I think exactly what they were talking about. And yeah, like you were saying, I think the only difference would be if you added black and white and then put like a vintage tint on top of that, it would colorize the black and white. So
Yeah,
cases like that.
You can find a combination where it does matter, but
But often,
ultimately,
yeah,
make the photo look good.
totally.
Don't worry about the order of the filters.
Exactly. I think that's it as far as
All right,
this photo.
we got like 10 minutes. Let's see if we can get through the number 11 here, the mission.
The number one mission, photo.
Yeah, because of our interesting pole dynamics.
I might have skewed it towards myself, Scott. Okay.
That's okay. So this one, hit my mic there. This one is this is an iPhone shot. And it's not a raw photo. It's just, whatever the iPhone does. So it's already got a lot of the color, and everything is pretty strong. But what ultimately, it's one of these things where if I could have moved, to my left and been able to photograph the front of the mission without this tree in front of it, that would have been my ideal. That just wasn't physically possible, and maintain this height on the photo here. So for me, the area that's most interesting is really, let me use a red for, there's a lot of orange in here, is really this area here. It's like, I just like the way the building's coming in here. That's there. The old tree is not bad. I'd like to downplay the bits of the greenery here and just tighten up things ever so slightly. So this, in theory, shouldn't take a lot to finish off. I will begin with a crop, and the reason for that, C for crop, is at the bottom. There's just these little bits of the bright flowers and bright foliage. Those I find more distracting than anything else here, and perhaps trimming away that stuff, maybe some of it. I'm torn about this door. We'll go ahead and do that. Maybe tighten it a little bit here. I'm looking to have as clean of a border as I can on the edges without sacrificing the composition. Now for iPhone photos, you won't have a camera profile, or any non-raw photo. There's no camera profile, so you can't play with that. Auto, I honestly tends to be too much for me, at least with the iPhone, because or your Samsung or your Android device, whatever it is, the software that's in your phone is already doing its magic to amplify color, make the photo its best as possible. They tend to be pretty good. And so, auto, I'll try it. And if anything, in this case, maybe I'll add a little bit of it. And similar for white balance, I'll try out auto. I didn't, the sliders change, but it's barely perceptible. It's like, well, at that point, I'll take ON1's word for it. And I didn't notice a difference, but I'm going to guess this is slightly more accurate. So cool, great. A couple of things that I just want to do is I want the sky to pop more. I can do that with a color adjustment. Sky, and maybe tone it back a little bit. I'll add a second color adjustment, and I want to try out this desert again, because that's going to do reds, oranges, and yellows. Now it's juicing the sky incredibly. So let's zero out what it did to the sky. I've already dealt with the sky previously. I don't want to shift the greens anywhere. I just want the yellows, which it didn't do any change there. Orange, red. What happened there? It jumped over to sky. Interesting. Okay. I must have double-clicked something a little bit too aggressively and reset the filter and not the sliders. So let me do it this way, get it close, and then I can maintain my red, orange, yellow, and then dial that back some. And I said this sweep of this building and the front of the mission is what I like the most. I want to downplay the right side of the photo. So this foliage here, I'd like to be darker, and really the entire right side of the photo. So local adjustment, we'll start with darken, use a gradient, and just drop it on the scene. Spread it out. Let's dial it back some. I guess I can push that in a little farther. Dial it back some. I don't want it in the sky because I don't want to darken that part of the sky. So I still have my mask area open, brush, paint out. Perfect brush is still set. So I can kind of click through here just to get the edges done. Let me put the O key on so you can see what's happening. Let's switch our view to red, a little easier to work with. Just to get the edges around there. Okay. Command or Control R to turn off the perfect brush. Then I can work through the rest. One minor misclick on my tree line. So Command or Control R, turn it back on, Shift X, bring that back in. I'm just doing a few single clicks around there to take care of that. Feather out the edges of my mask a little. All right, so the sky is mostly in order. Looks like this is a good showcase of why we have two different masking modes. I switch this back to grayscale. We're going to see, oh yeah, you missed some of that feathering out there. Whoops. Undo, Shift X, Command R to turn off my perfect brush and then get that sky fully taken care of. Not sure what happened there. There we go. Okay, that's looking better. Back to effects and a final step. You see me use vignettes a bunch, I think on every photo. So actually for this one, because let's see if we can get this to be a pretty, yeah, this is, I don't want a square kind of thing. I want like a nice oval. And so I'll use a local adjustment to do the vignette instead. Darken. I'll choose the center. And that way I can shape this and position it at a very nice angle to really showcase my subject. Spread that feather out really, really far. And then taper off the darkness ever so before and after. All right. Let's do it before and after on that. So before, when we first saw the photo, it was like, oh, it looks pretty good. Yeah. And after, I think really the big thing there was adding a little bit more color. So you saw me use color adjustments a bunch of times. Sky is great for blues. Desert is great for a variety of situations. You saw me use it even on that street photo. Reds, oranges, and yellows. Try the desert style. Let me stop there since we're almost at time, and I do want to leave a few more minutes for questions.
Yeah, that was awesome. So quick question from John. Is there any advantage to using Vignette versus using, like you did, local adjustments to create the vignette?
I don't know if there's really an advantage or not. The vignette's convenient because if you're in effects and you have the tool there, great, use it. But otherwise, you can feather both of them. I think the local adjustment is a little more flexible, as you saw here with its shaping and so forth. But I can't think of an advantage over one or the other.
For sure. Another question about modifying exposure and things locally. Do you always use local adjustments when you're doing those sort of techniques, or do you use maybe the tone enhancer in effects or maybe a filter for that?
I tend to use local adjustments. That's my preferred method. If you're using the tone enhancer and using a mask, that's fine too. Again, the specific stack up of filters, that's less important. It's what's the result of your photo. For
sure. I think that's pretty much everything. You covered just so much. I think that's everything as far as questions go.
Cool.
Let me, there's a couple more running in here now that I'm saying.
Okay. Let me go ahead and pop this back over to browse.
One question was,
yeah, I can take a skim
when it comes to iPhone or mobile images, do you tend to edit those on your phone, or do you send them into a processing application like Photo Raw or something like that?
So I tend to bring them into an application, and an application on my laptop or my desktop. I'm just, either my fingers are too big, or I do not do well editing on my phone. On an iPad, kind of, but as you saw, some of the types of adjustments that I like to do, and I want to zoom in and I really want to adjust the levels, I just work better on a desktop or a laptop. But if it's in a pinch and I'm in the field, I will usually bring it into, and sometimes the native camera app, but usually into like ON1 Mobile or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm the same way. I can't do the editing on a small screen. It's just, I don't.
You
It's
get
not the same
accustomed
reward.
to, a nice big display, and then it's tough to go back.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's time, and just a ton of people saying big thank you, and that was awesome. So thanks so much, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Great.
Everyone really appreciates it. So
awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Dylan.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for sticking around. And this is recorded and will be posted later. So if you did miss anything, don't worry, it'll be on YouTube. And of course, we'll always have more coming from Scott in the future. So be on the lookout for that. And also Scott's new photo kit's out, the Going Big with Resize AI. So check that out if you haven't. It's on his website and the ON1 website.
Great.